Welcome everyone. Today I intend to share with you one of the biggest trolls of all time. I'm talking next level trolling. Trolling so hard that he puts YouTube pranksters to shame. But his trolling did not come without consequences. Before we start this video, I'd recommend you drop a like and subscribe. It would be real helpful in the growth of this channel. Thank you. So without further ado, let's take a look into the true story of Martin Guerre and Poncet. In 1527, at the age of 3 years old, Martin Guerre's family moved to a tiny village known as Artegau in southwestern France. When he was about 14 years old, Martin married Bertrande de Rolls, the daughter of a well-off family, and together they had one only child. Years later, Martin was accused of stealing grain from his father, and in the summer of 1548, he fled the village. Since he did not pass away, his wife Bertrande was not allowed to remarry. 8 years later, a man by the name of Arnaud Dutil, more commonly known by his nickname Poncet, appears. Now, Poncet is the troll of this story, and this man uses some serious acting and trolling skills to get his way. Poncet looked very similar to Martin, and he also had detailed knowledge of Martin's life. He convinced most of the villagers that he was actually Martin, and the villagers did believe him. Poncet's knowledge of Martin's life and physical appearance were so strong that Martin's 4 sisters and wife believed that Poncet was truly Martin. But there was one suspicious man. This man was Pierre Guerre. Pierre was Martin's paternal uncle. When Martin's father passed away, Pierre received the inheritance because Martin was away from the village. Bertrande's father also passed away, and Pierre went on to marry Bertrande's mother. Therefore, Pierre was basically the head of both of Martin and Bertrande's families. But in the meantime of Pierre's suspicion, Poncet was focusing on maintaining his image as Martin. Over the next 3 years, he had 2 children with Bertrande. Either he convinced Bertrande he was really Martin, or Bertrande was just sick and tired of being lonely and cheated on her AWOL husband. Either way, Poncet swooping in and having children with a married woman is wild to me, especially for this time period. One thing we do know about children is that they are expensive, even if you're a 16th century peasant. Poncet decided to sue Pierre for Martin's father's inheritance. Since Poncet was pretending to be Martin, and Martin was the oldest son, in theory, Poncet should get the inheritance. At this point, Pierre's suspicion rose even more. He went to Bertrande and tried to convince her that Poncet was a fraud and not her real husband. Then, on a random day, a soldier passed through Artegau and claimed that Poncet was a fraud, and that the true Martin had actually lost his leg in war. This prompted Pierre to physically assault Poncet, but Bertrande intervened. In 1559, the villagers accused Poncet of impersonating the real Martin Guerre. But Bertrande remained on his side, and Poncet was acquitted in 1560. Despite losing his trial, Pierre stayed committed to proving Poncet as an imposter. Pierre did a little undercover detective work and found out that Poncet was a trickster from a small town nearby. Pierre initiated a new case against Poncet and convinced Bertrande to support the charge, to which she eventually agreed. Bertrande testified that at first she honestly believed the man to be her husband, but that she had since realized that he was an imposter. With his back against the wall, Poncet then challenged Bertrande. He claimed that if she were to swear that he was not her husband, he would gladly agree to be executed, but Bertrande stayed silent. After hearing more than 150 witnesses, with many testifying that Poncet was the true Martin, including Martin's 4 sisters, others testified that Poncet's real identity was Arnaud Dutil from a town nearby. Poncet was then convicted and sentenced to death by beheading. Obviously, this is an unfortunate punishment for Poncet, so he decided to appeal the decision to Parliament. He eloquently argued his case, and the judges tended to believe his version of the story. He claimed that Bertrande was pressured to lie to the court by greedy Pierre, who wanted to keep all of the inheritance. During his trial, Poncet had an extensive detailed questioning about his past, and his statements were all proven accurate. It seemed to many that Poinsett was the real Martin Guerre. Then, dramatically, a man appeared in the trial with a wooden leg, claiming to be the true Martin Guerre. When asked about his past, the wood-legged man was not able to recall details as well as Poinsett. However, the two men were presented to Guerre's family. Pierre, Bertrand, and Martin's 4 sisters all agree the newly arrived man was the true Martin Guerre. Of course, Poinsett maintained his innocence, but he was convicted and sentenced to death for adultery and fraud. Eventually, he confessed to the crimes. Poinsett revealed that he had learned about Martin's life from 2 men that had accidentally confused him for Martin. He then decided to take Martin's place, and 2 conspirators were helping him with the details. He apologized to all those involved, including Bertrand, for having deceived her. He was hanged outside of Martin's house in Artegau 4 days later. The real Martin had moved to Spain, where he served in a militia. He then joined the Spanish army. In 1557, Martin was wounded in the Battle of San Quintin, and his leg had to be amputated. For the next couple of years, he lived in a monastery before returning to his wife and family. If you're ever interested in learning more about this topic, I recommend checking out the book, The Return of Martin Guerre. It was published in 1983 by a Princeton history professor. I had to read it for a European history course in college, and I found it very interesting. Thank you guys very much for tuning into this video. I'll see you guys next time.